mailing address for a Bloodstorm handbook. By the way, the game company's product went out of business not long after its release. The tabletop game received a brief appearance in Replay, but Entertainment Weekly gave it a B. Grand Saturn and PS version were announced but never released. Night Slashers, 1993. Database. Playing like a more violent Final Fight, it replaced the street gangs of the game with monsters of every shape and size. Three hunters, Jake White, a European vampire hunter named Christopher Powell, and an Asian martial artist called Zhao Hong, with mystic abilities. You get zombies, werewolves, vampires, elementals, mummy, a golem, a mad scientist, a Dracula lookalike, Frankenstein, and Death himself. And also one low-level enemy variant, harmless zombies who would shoot bombs at their own organs at you with left eye or wall. And these Japanese version of Night Slashers hit with the fully gory, red-blooded action, whereas the US version of the arcade port was released with an operator's toggle to control the blood culture and 4 level. 3 players was the limit here, and 6 stages. Night Slashers had some commercial success in Japan and was ranked 9th most successful arcade unit of October 1993. It was overlooked in North America, being number 58 on Playmeter's cable games at 93. It eventually landed on Nintendo Switch through Johnny Turbo's Arcade in 2018, and a full remake built by Storm Friday under Forever Entertainment license released in September 2024. Undercover Cops, 1992. Iron. Now, this Iron game ran on their own M92 arcade board. Visually, looks incredible. Undercover Cops is set in 2043. City Sweepers, Zan Takahara, Matt Fields, and Rosa Villan battle Dr. Claymore and the Marenko Corporation through the wreckage of New York City. Many of the game's art team members left to form the Nazca Corporation, which then went on to create Metal Slug series. The sprite details are amazing. They're dense, and they have given this variety of enemies like mole creatures, jetpack mutants, enemies with blade hands, and more. Players cannot pick up weapons, but the environments are full of tools like burning oil drums, steel girders, concrete pillars, giant fish, and to restore your health, you've got to eat those live animals like frogs, snails, mice, and birds. The arcade game differed quite a bit between Japanese and world releases, and a version out for renewal update for the Japanese machine included much of the Japanese moveset with English text. The US SNES port was announced in Nintendo Power issued with EA, but was later cancelled and eventually only released in Japan in 1995 via Very, not getting an official North American physical release until 2021 through retrofit. Mutant Fighter, Death Braid, 1991, Data East, Death Braid in Japan, Mutant Fighter in the West. This was Data East's stab at the gladiatorial arena fighter, not a side-scrolling brawl. This was a direct fighter, but underneath a wrestling game engine. You have 8 characters, 3 humans, fighters, an Amazon, and Hercules, and 5 monsters, werewolf, minotaur, dragon, golem, and beast.
I'll be working to get you the best deal in the boardroom.
Like Spike Wall, Hell Ring, Runaway Floors, and a Dimension State.
When you get new
like
contracts,
Randular Sistine Chapel paintings on the floor, you have to beat 12 opponents and fight the archmages to take control of the kingdom. The combat included a super leader, among the earliest included
Or any specific goals that will be
Still, when a player grew or was hit, taking hits would burn significantly more meters than dealing damage, and then the super throw would flash on the screen when ready. The Japanese version actually gave the characters names,
good luck this season,
whereas
and I'll catch you next
Western
time.
only listed their titles. Voices were dubbed in English at Rayo Sound Studio in San Jose, California, and it was used in both versions. German magazine Video Games gave it a 22% rating when it was released on the SNES via IMAX in Japan. Their opinion was the animation looked like Lego Land, and when a punch landed, it made the same noise as a baby slurping porridge. Zero Team, 1993. Seibu Kaihatsu. Zero Team was Seibu Kaihatsu. Maker of Friday. Attempt at a 4-player beat-em-up game with 6 levels. A standard hostage rescue mission. But the thing that separated it from its peers was the hardware encryption used for revisions of its port. The same anti-piracy protection used for original Friday made it nearly impossible to emulate until recent years. It featured 4 characters: Ace, Speed, Spin, and Ego, each with a different stat layout. Ace's diving kicks for the most damage, while Spin had long arms and a fast slap attack. The Ego was slow but heavy. You could pull objects from the environment and use them to fight here as well. The world version of this game was released through FabTech in the US in June 1993.
Welcome to our viewers from around the globe. You join us just as today's practice session for the Australian Grand Prix is about to start.
The Switch version was released in November.
So Anthony, lots to do of course in these sessions, lots of programs to run. What are you looking for when you jump in the car for full practice?
Well, you have basic checks first of all. You know, is the car working correctly? What the track conditions like? And you'll be chasing that as the session goes on. Things like that. Then you start getting into the nitty-gritty of it, and they become more like test sessions where it's all about gathering new data, testing components, tweaking the setup, and so on. So there's only so much actual practice that these drivers need. Most of them will be plenty familiar enough with the track layout, either from previous experience or from the simulator.
8 characters for 1995 arcade brawler was quite a big score than most games of that nature. Most of the games offered only 3 or 4. The characters included brawlers, monsters, beastmen, and wrestlers with different moves tied to the game's futuristic set. This game was an arcade-only release, so no port was ever announced or released, making it largely vanished from public life. The game is now playable only on Mame, which helped follow Mom beat-em-up Bananas. Freaky Soft was mainly known for making the Super Robot Force game, which makes the game an unusually decent Freaky Soft package. 1993. Konami's last game, it released this and Metamorphic Force at the same time in 1993, and one fast forward game. Instead, it posed for Richmond, Forest, Wade, and Niles, and many civilians were killed after their pal P9's hit them. The setup is so close, but Konami decided to stop it. Stated, it shows that it's awesome. This one states they have arcade characters. One playing Scramble and one playing Incident. The fictional Incident game stars the Konami arcade adventure that never made it to arcade. Oh, by the way, if you pick up a Twin Peaks Plus, you're gonna get one. One of the developers, Nakagawa, included themselves as playable characters twice. Once as a referee with the River Falls battle, and once as a stable for the battle. The sprites are massive. Characters use their characters as their feet. Playing at school has never been great. Console built on arcade exclusively. Metamorphic 1993. Konami. Metamorphic Force has the same hardware as Mystic Warrior. Mechanically, it's close to Konami's X-Men Capital, except for character. These 4 ancient guardians summoned by goddess Athena could collect the golden statue power-up. When used, a golden statue power-up transforms you into an anthropomorphic being. Transformations not only granted greater combat prowess, but it changed up their unique. When the transformation was removed, it returned them to their original state. The beginning part statue appearing came with the dropping of random chests in the top of the sky, or by traveling through the DC, ground spaces, big rocky islands with quick step being item, kind of a direct callback. There's this guest set, where you were in the back of the dead, serves that much longer. User magazine alongside WWF wrestling. Shadow Wars, 1993. Those compete. In my opinion, those invented competing. Shadow Wars was their attempt at how color could be mechanic and reinvented. They gave us 6 buttons where most made about 2 Shadow Wars had individual buttons for 2 types of weapon and 2 types of an armaments. Levels of kicks, stamina, held down, and attack. It's like a button. Arrows, knives, aerial attacks, 3 fights, combos, and 2 character-specific special. You have time to ninja, and the swordsman, and the muscle man, and the yogi as your character. The best part about this game was no doubt the precision. So you can weaken an enemy for certain duration. You can persist within your character, visible to the enemies or complete their unique moves. Shadow Wars never saw a movie. It has no sequel. It was partially unsuccessfully done. Eventually, we were playing in 1993 arcade. Almost certainly never heard of it. There are multiple endings depending on who you care about. And both players play the game together. The Combat Trials, 1990. Technos Technique. This is also a Technos, though with a far more different structure. Each of the game's 6 acts consist of closed arenas where the player faces ways of being and members of whom across a hero. Think of this like a wrestling ring or those great shows. There are 3 playable characters. Berserker, the blue outfit, blonde mullet, Slumber with stronger yellow outfit, black laptop, and Blitz, the fastest but quickest kids, right outfit gun, able to grab enemies, use weapons, slam 2 enemies, hit together at once, throw objects such as motorcycles, snowboards, and pinball machines at enemies. The final boss is Monolith Planet, that name's written. The Combat Trials was Japan's second highest grossing major unit in August of 1990. It was released on SNES in 1992 with added story cutscenes, but for the 2-player and increased enemy numbers substantially. It was released on Wii Virtual Console, America in 2009. Little fun fact, Malota has made an appearance in Rubber City Girls and a billboard showing the combat. Ninja Baseball Battle, 1993. I wrote the concept actually originated with German Sound. I wrote America's National Sales Manager. He had read a USA Today list about the top grossing films where one of them was the the other was Soviet and Battlers. He combined the word ninja and baseball, making counterpart baseball bat and unicorn, and licensed the idea from Myron Japan in 1991. What Myron Japan made was radically different from the one-player platform that German Vision. Instead, they produced a 4-player multiplayer with swamp ninjas and baseball players who were really controlling the baseball ball being artifact. Your health bar went red when it started getting close to the end, and unlocked extra moves. This gave players a reason to fight when they were close to death, as opposed to playing defensively. The characters' names are a direct reference to active stars at the top. Captain O'Day, Dispatch Rhino, Meatball, Arthur, and Snake Sword. Of the 1,042 arcade players that have that period, only 50 made their way to North America. And Germans described the marketing effort as being very disappointing. Comedy later helped revive the game's popularity a decade after it left the United States. Radiant Bug, 1992. Sega built by Sega and System 32 hardware. The same board running Golden Axe, The Revenge of the Kid Data, and later Radiant Bug used this hardware for one right scaling. The characters literally shrank as they receded into the background and the earth was became in 1992, it was truly something old, seeing as quite dynamic on the screen and moved further back into the depth of the view. With 4 characters, Sinbad, Triumph, Unicorn, and John, was to fight through 7 stages, ending with Radiant
Damn it.
Dragon Gun, 1992. Data use. Dragon Gun is a two-player, on-rails, fantasy-themed light gun shooter. These two players receive their own physical dragon-shaped gun accessories and were called in by the Princess of Playtoria. And to use the legendary dragon guns against forged monsters that had ravished the world. There was no real easy standard firing gun, but a second button activated the bombs that summoned the dragon to clear the screen, which would eventually recharge themselves over time or from item drops. The Japanese version used the voice of Masako Nozawa, which was Son Goku, as part of the Japanese staff. Data East developed Dragon Gun as what their staff had dubbed as the spiritual trilogy, along with Cliffhanger and Locked and Loaded, with the same planner and composer Hiroaki Yoshida. Some arcade machines were converted to Gun Hard / Locked and Loaded, but were extremely rarely converted to Dragon Gun because of the additional sound processor used.
Premium cuts of meat without the premium prices.
It's an old thing. If you have Snap or Medicaid, you may qualify for a free iPhone or Samsung, plus up to 10 gigabytes of data. Apply online in just a minute. We'll ship it to you for free, but are limited. So visit tagmobile.com to check your eligibility today.
Wouldn't it all be children? Fraction just frustrating. Yeah, we can tell it up.
This game immediately stands out before you even start playing. On the screen, you'll witness a demon literally rip someone's arm and head off, and a woman have a knife driven through her skull. Display as black silhouettes against the red background due to hardware limitations. Tecmo implied most of the animation. The game was released as Wild Thing, and in Tecmo 9 in the West, instead of battling alone, players would fight alongside Smokeman, an extremely powerful attacker who throws punches and kicks with lots of power. If the players went to the Tiger, they would wield a spike ball and chain, which does less damage and has a larger ring. The player could also summon the Flying Dragon by collecting a random drop from an enemy called a Dragon Skull. When riding the Flying Dragon, the player would become invincible to all attacks, and the Dragon's breath would destroy enemies and bosses instantaneously. Without a mount, Tecmo 9 possessed short range, weak attacks, and little chance of survival. All of the bosses were 2-1, except for the final boss, the Plump. Plump Bank was the 6th highest grossing arcade table game in July 1989. Currently available as an arcade archives title on the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation. Guardians of the Hood, 1992, Atari games. Guardians of the Hood was built using Atari Games' own G42 arcade board, the Motorola 68000 at 14.3 MHz with MOS 6502 for sound support, YM2151 for sound chips which utilized digitized graphics, and sprite scaling that was identical to its predecessor, Street Fighter 1990. It's now widely considered the spiritual successor due to it sharing much of the sprite scaling techniques, moves, and similar approach to gameplay. Featuring 4 characters, Honor, Chief, Javier, and Tina, all characters work at a neighborhood kid and want their way through the dregs, sabers, and the dragon skins to confront the ultimate villain known as Mr. Big. The twist of Guardians of the Hood was how it handled its boss stages. Like, at the end of each stage, players would face off in sparring rounds with defeated boss characters. If the player won the fight, then that boss would join their team to beat them to fight on the next stage. Replay ranked Guardians of the Hood as the 12th most popular game on the arcade floor in August 1992. At the ATE show in London in March 1992, the game was publicly revealed, then released to arcade arcades do. And like Street Fighter, it was never ported to console. 18 games. Some bad, some sold, maybe a few dozens globally. Some never got a sequel or a port. No second chance. That's the thing with arcades. If the cap didn't point up, it didn't matter. It was gone. Now, drop a like if any of these hit different. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the games that history forgot.
This is tender, juicy, slow-smoked barbecue from Arby's.
I can remember being absolutely enthralled by arcade gaming at a very young age. I was born in the mid-1970s, so right as my interest in gaming began, the arcade blossomed into its very own golden age. It was here when things jumped from full electromechanical and black and white games to software that was much more impressive visually while offering a ton new variety in regards to gameplay. Arcade businesses were popping up everywhere, and it wasn't hard finding your favorite games at local convenience stores, malls, and everywhere in between. These games had such a profound effect on me as a child. It shaped my preferences for years to come. Around that time, console gaming began to really explode as well, with Atari's VCS or 2600 selling millions of units in the United States alone. Among its library would be the very first arcade ports I played. Sometimes these conversions were quite good, while other times they were absolutely dreadful. In part 1 here, we're going to take a stroll down memory lane and go over some of my favorite titles when I began first playing arcade games and the home versions that followed. These games were released during the period of extremely impressionable time in my youth. I've got some real classics for you here.